Alright, so we're moving into final testing stage. The rebuild on the 2510 is done. Everything's cleaned. I replaced a few components on the relay control board, put it all back together, so it's good to go. What I wanted to show you here is this is a test setup that you need to have to test the 2500 receiver along with the 2510. So what I've got set up here is this is a wall housing for the 2500 receiver. It's the real deal. Here's the big giant power transformer on the top. This one's wired up on a power cord so I can just plug it in. There's a terminal board here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pairs or 14 interconnect wires. And this brown cable right here is the interconnect cable. This would have come from NuTone. I'm not sure what lengths it was available in, but I think it was probably 200 feet or so, or maybe more, maybe 250. And it would travel throughout the house and end up at the 2510 terminal board. These are twisted pair wires, and they're made up in different color pairs, and they connect onto the terminals going down this strip of the terminal board. I've got a door speaker wired up here, and my door speaker is right here. A little hard to see. It's my standard bench door speaker I use on all intercoms. And then I've got it set up with a single pair of remote stations, and those are wired up here with an 8 conductor cable. I didn't have any IW8 at the shop because I forgot to bring it from the storage when I came this morning, so I used some IW6 and then just used the black and black-white pair of another IW6. It's fine for testing, doesn't really matter as long as you don't get them mixed up. You got to get color for color when you hook them up. This will be the A channel speaker, and the A channel speaker on this system is an 8-inch speaker. Oh wait, it's high fidelity. That's what it would have said in the panel here if it didn't have the controls. And the way these are designed, they had insert blank panels that would come out, and you can see here on this one it just has an opening because this one's missing. Don't know why. Don't remember where these came from. I've had them for a really long time. These were the more deluxe 8-inch speakers. They have cloth grills. And this would have had a blank ivory panel in it, and it would have said NuTone solid state stereo, and then it would say high fidelity in script because that made it fancy. Anyway, on the A channel you have the intercom controls, you have your door talk and listen, you have your inside talk and listen, you have A channel volume, which is for this speaker, you have B channel volume, which is for this speaker, and then you have your AM FM selection button and your FM radio station change button, which is like you saw on the 2510. So this is the basic setup to test it. I'm going to set the 2510 here and plug it into its sockets on its terminal board, plug in these connections off the wall housing. This is the power from the transformer, and this is all the audio connections, and these go to this board and then over to there, and turn it all on and see what we get. So a little more to set up, and then we'll see what we've got. Well, that seemed like a rather appropriate song for final testing. So here we have it. It's all set up, and fortunately, it's all good and it all works. There was a little bit of fiddling around to get it all on the bench and get it all hooked up correctly. So what we have here is our rebuilt 2500 stereo receiver. We've got our cleaned and serviced 2510 intercom control unit. They're wired into their respective terminal boards and wall housings. We have our pair of high fidelity 8-inch NuTone wall speakers. Controls are on this one like I showed you before. You know, you can't really see it at this point, but they're there. And in going through the unit, it all actually does work correctly. There was a little bit of an issue with one of the wires that goes into one of the multi-pin plugs on the 2510 terminal board. This is one of the real downsides to this type of design. You have so many little wires, and they get old and they get brittle and they get stressed and things come apart, and you're looking for problems, and then all of a sudden you see, oh wait, what's this black wire that's supposed to be in a pin and it's not, and then you got to put it back together, and finally the radio played. It's all good. It's a little hard to see. I've got the lights, some of the lights off in the lab because they create interference on the radio reception. Radio reception today is not that great, so we're doing the best we can with it. But we'll do a quick checkout with it. The controls on your 2500 stereo receiver, you have your input selector here. We have REM, which is for remote, and that allows the remote AM, FM change buttons to operate. You have AM, FM, there's a phonograph input, a tape input, and an auxiliary input. Most of these systems, when they're installed, by default had at least a phonograph, but not always. There was an in-wall cassette player that they made. They also later on made an in-wall 8-track player. And if you're lucky enough to have one of those, I'm really sorry. Auxiliary can be used for almost any kind of modern input. So if you want to connect a CD player or your cables that you plug into your smartphone or an iPod, or you want to plug a Bluetooth receiver into it, that would be the spot that you'll use. You have bass and treble controls. You have balance, which is right and left because it is a stereo system, and then your main power on, off, and volume switch here. You have your tuning dial. These, you have AFC, which is automatic frequency control, which helps it lock into a pre-tuned FM radio station. You have loudness on or off. When the loudness switch is in the on position, it adds about 8 dB of bass into the music. And as you raise the volume of the music, the bass emphasis drops down. There's a formula that's a standard formula that's used for that, so you don't overdrive the speakers. You have a stereo and mono switch. This is for the FM radio. Some stations, if you're in a weak area and the reception on a particular station is not great, if you switch it to mono, you'll eliminate some of the background static. And then there is a record button. If you have the built-in cassette player recorder, you can record off the radio onto a cassette, and you can record your intercom conversations also. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. Most of the time this never gets used. And of course, like all better quality hi-fi stereo receivers, you have a headphone jack, which I don't know if people ever actually used that. Maybe it was an 80s kind of thing. But it does work. I do have a set of headphones here, and I use that when I'm working on tuners a lot because it blocks out a lot of the background noise in the lab, and you can really focus in on what the reception really sounds like. So that's your controls here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this up. And we're on FM right now, and you can see our FM stereo indicator is lit up. If we switch it to mono, the FM stereo light goes out, and now it's playing in mono. This system, although you won't be able to hear on the video, it does have very nice stereo separation. You can hear the differences between the two channels, which is what you really want on a stereo system. So that's very nice. The loudness works. We lose the bass, and it adds the bass back into it. AFC, it's hard to determine without it actually being installed in a home how much difference that's making, but it does tend to help. It helps prevent the tuner from drifting off the station over time. Our reception is good.
I'm doing whatever it is you like. Cat yoga, interpretive dance.
But like I said, reception here in the shop today, it's kind of a gloomy, cloudy, rainy day, and the reception is not usually as good here in those kind of days as when it's bright and sunny outside. We can switch it over to AM. One of my favorite channels.
Exclusively from American Vision.
That's 810.
Ultra high and eat along with members of the opposite sex. time deal of the day. Take note of this.
Oh, no doubt. One of the great teams of all time.
And that's 680. 680 is the strongest AM station after 810, which is like a 100,000 watt station. So now what we're going to do is we're going to leave it on 680, and I'm going to show you how the remote music control feature functions. So we're going to move the selector switch to remote. And we're going to use the AM/FM button. We're going to switch it back to AM.
And I'm also, we're doing the shirt.
And when you switch it back to AM, it plays whichever station the AM tuner is actually tuned to. So I left it on 680, so when I push AM here, it plays 680. If I had left it on 810, when I push the button, it plays 810. So that becomes, you can't change or preset AM stations. You can only do that on FM stations. That's because of the way the AM tuner is designed with that variable condenser or capacitor that I showed you in a previous video that had a problem. But now we can also switch it to FM. And now we're on FM, so I'll turn it back up. And back here, I showed you earlier on the 2510 terminal board, you have the 6 sliding pots. I was a little, I had forgot, all 6 of those can be set to AM or FM stations. And I sort of randomly set those to fairly strong stations. And each time I push the FM change button,
How you can save 12
it will move to the next one. So we're on FM2 now, and if you listen carefully, you can hear the big giant chunking relay cycle every time I push the button.
Cloud insurgents. Protect your personal and professional reputation.
That one's off a little bit. These sliding fader pots on the 2510 tuner board, this is my shop board, it's not the customer's, and it's really old. It's from 1980 and it doesn't get used much, and I think the pots need to be cleaned, so they move a little bit. It's a little hard to get it just right, but we can cycle through. So now we're on FM5 and then FM6 and back to FM1. This was quite an advanced thing back in the mid-70s when this system came out, and it's a fairly clever design because they were able to incorporate it with the standard 8-conductor wire that they use just to wire the system. You also have these controls on the remote speakers here. You have the AM, FM button and the FM change button, so you can change stations throughout the house. I haven't actually tested this, so we'll see what happens. There we go.
Right now, Anthony Anderson here with 3 reasons.
We can help you break your addiction.
And if you imagine that this has been installed in a fairly good sized home, because your average 1,400 square foot tract house wouldn't necessarily have a system like this. It would be usually in a larger custom home. It saves a lot of steps to not have to schlep all the way to the control unit or to the receiver to change the station. So it was a nice added feature. Let's go back to our standard FM.
Career, the Buster Hub.
And it does really sound nice. The 8-inch high-fidelity speakers have a really nice sound. This model uses 45 ohm speaker cones, which give you a little different sound quality than lower impedance speaker cones do. All in all, this was an arduous repair. It's been here at the shop longer than I would have guessed because it had a lot of, I guess, hidden problems that we needed to solve. The tuner problem was the biggest issue, and it was hard to come up with a tuner board, but we finally found one. Thank you, Bob. And all I've got to do is just clean up the faceplate just a little bit, put some buttons back in place, and it's ready to go back to the customer. So that's a wrap up on a 2500 Stereo Music Intercom repair. If you have one of these, send it to me. I'll fix it for you. It's a lot of work, but in the end, it's a really special system, and there is no real replacement for it. It was the second to the last stereo music intercom NuTone made, and there's nothing today that would really replace it. And if you've got a lot of these speakers throughout your house, you know, what are you going to do? So I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it's a lot of parts and there's been a lot of on and off with it, but it is finally done. If you enjoyed the series, you should watch. I think there are 6 parts altogether. Watch all 6 parts, see what's involved in repairing one of these. If you would give it a thumbs up on YouTube, I would appreciate it. You can leave comments on any of the videos. If you like our YouTube channel, please subscribe to it so more people will find us when they search for things about NuTone intercoms. And that's all for today. A little bit of cleaning up, and I'm going to pack it up and get it sent out this week. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.